I'm almost the advocate, the compassionate one, showing them how to show compassion to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, because
Oh,
they come embarrassed about their spending habits
yeah.
or wanting to minimize it. And
Mhm.
I could very gently be like, what about clothes? How often do you like to shop? How much do you spend on clothes? And they came into that call wanting to pretend like they don't buy clothes.
Right.
But
You're
that
like,
doesn't serve yeah, it doesn't serve them at all. And
you're like, but it's
my
right here. I see what you spend on clothes. It's not a secret.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Kim Drucker Stockwell, and I am here with Women's Survival Guide and Emily Burnett, and we're going to talk about money today and her company, Moso Money. And I love the concept of this because the goal of what she does is to help women want to be involved with their money,
Mhm.
not to be afraid of it or to be ashamed of their debt and all the bad decisions that they've made. And if they have, she will help them out of it or prevent them from falling into it.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that I should ask her about the meaning of the name of the business, and that's what I'm gonna do right now. So,
Awesome.
Emily, take it away. Tell me about the meaning.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so happy to be here, Kim, and talking with you like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the name of my company is Moso Money. And Moso is a type of bamboo that grows slowly at first. I think this is true for all bamboos, but the one I know best is Moso. So while it's getting its roots right, it grows slowly at first. And then when its roots are healthy and strong, it can start growing inches in a day. So you cannot watch paint dry on a wall, but you can watch
Oh my
bamboo grow. Yeah. And the analogy there is it's so easy, especially in 30s, 40s, 50s, to focus on the big stuff, retirement, investments, but often the roots are really unhealthy. And that's where there's so much personal shame and guilt and fear. And that's why I focus on the roots.
I think that is an apt name. How did you come up with it? Did it just
Oh,
who
yeah. I
did hear the
brainstormed.
name?
Yeah. I brainstormed like 700 others.
Okay.
And then I read that one in a devotional book. I couldn't even tell you the name of the book, but it really resonated that getting your roots right, and especially your money roots right, in my case,
Yeah.
really is such a clear analogy for all of us. Like people just they hear it and they're like, I get it.
Right. It does make sense. And especially since I already know your story, which
Mhm,
is a story that so many people have, but so many women have. And I think
mhm,
that um, for women, I mean, we don't even get taught home ec anymore. So, I mean,
mhm,
in the old days, you'd go to school. I think it probably stopped just before my generation. And so, balancing a checkbook or all these things, somehow, I guess what your parents were supposed to teach you, or you learn by
mhm,
accident. There are all
mhm,
these kids who, they'd get that credit card and they just go bonkers because
mhm,
you pay the minimum. But the part that w- kids weren't focusing in on was that the the interest rate was like 18, 19%. I don't even know
mhm.
what it is now because I don't have a credit card. I only have an American Express because I know anytime they're like 25% off if you sign up for a Banana Republic card today.
Mhm.
No, it'll something wrong will go on. I'll end up with all these fees and I get hosed. And so I years ago got scared by credit basically
Mm,
because of stuff like that. Like in the old days when you'd send in a check, inevitably they'd be like, "Oh, it was a day late, so we're gonna slap you with a
mm.
fee." And you're like, "But I just want this to end." And in those days, you could pay online. And
Yeah.
they would just like get you. And so I'm very afraid of credit, but I haven't had really big talks with my daughters about
Mhm.
this.
Mm.
They have bank cards that I do think double as no, I think they just have bank cards. And when they've
Yeah.
been away, we give them a credit card to use while they're away, but it's with an allowance. So they're not paying for it. which is also a
Mhm.
mistake because they're in college and they need to build their credit. So
Mhm.
hopefully towards the end of this conversation, we'll circle back because what Emily also does is teach parents how to deal with their kids and teaching them financial responsibility and to be
Mhm.
interested in it. And the part that I loved most about when Emily and I spoke last week is that the I think the key words were the want to be involved, but also when you finally get your act together and you paid your debt down and just and talking about women working with a budget that they've chosen, that they've created,
Mhm.
that they're sticking to, makes them feel empowered and makes them feel good instead of always feeling
Mhm.
badly about
Mhm.
themselves. So with that, I was going to hand it over to you and have your like 10-minute version of your double debt um
Yeah.
story. Take it away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did just wanna say that it really, you know, budgeting along somewhere in the last 30 years, I feel like got a really bad reputation.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is like not having financial,
Mm.
like positive restraints is is worse. It feels terrible.
Yeah.
So, and I know, so I'd love to share my story with your listeners. Um, I was taught well by parents who are still pretty frugal.
Mhm.
And then I got a credit card as an older teen,
Yeah.
and the world felt like my oyster. And
Mm.
this whole concept of buy now, pay later
Yeah.
or never was exciting.
Or
Yeah, right, right. Because it catches up with you
right.
inevitably.
Mhm.
And so I really did spend my 20s kind of amassing debt.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned to you, that was um, shopping sprees that, felt good for about 30 minutes.
Mhm.
And and then I'd think, oh, what have I done? um, so a lot of credit card debt, car loans. That was the bulk. I did have student loans that, in retrospect, I really didn't need to have gotten. But
And what did
hey,
you have what was the loan for if you didn't need to have gotten it, do you think?
well, I could have just planned better. I could have planned differently and better, and I
Okay.
could have managed my money better so that I didn't need to take out loans for my portion of tuition.
So your parents might have helped with a portion and then they
Mhm.
said, being these, incredibly down to earth people, "Here you go,
Yeah.
junior. So we're gonna cover the lion's share, but you get to do this amount." And then did
Mhm.
you talk to them when you went out and got the student loan?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't remember now if they had to be involved. I mean,
Um,
like, FAFSA would obviously check their income um,
and they
so
were
yeah,
like,
they were.
"Good luck."
Yeah, uh-huh, definitely. So I knew that they were paying half of, tuition and half of housing, I believe, freshman year, but after that, I was on my own for everything else.
Amazing.
And I am grateful for that because I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. Um, More than my siblings.
Oh,
They somehow navigated more responsibly than I did. But yeah, so I acquired all this debt. Um, and then, like I mentioned last week, I did have a car accident in my 20s that was bad. One of the silver linings was that the payout did allow me to pay off the bulk of the debt I'd acquired already. And I thought I had this new lease on life. Like
mhm.
I I'll be different.
How much
And I
debt
wasn't.
about did you have then?
Tens of thousands.
And
Yeah,
you were
in car, student loan, and credit cards.
and you were like 20-ish, 22?
27,
Oh, you were
27.
27.
Yeah, I was like
Okay, so
mid
you
to
were
late
20
20s.
so you still had your student debt
Yeah.
and you were
Yep.
27, which is
Yes.
saying something, because I know you were working. And
Mhm.
so you probably had why do I think the number 50 came up at some point?
Well, that was the second peak.
That was the second round. Okay.
Yeah.
First round,
Yeah.
let's say we were like 20, 30, or whatever that was.
Oh, yeah. Around there.
Yeah.
And and then
That's
I got right back into debt. because I had not changed like my money roots. And this whole concept of like, well, if I can't afford it, or if I'm not positive I can afford it, I should just use a credit card. That just like spirals. And so I was in my early 30s when I
Mhm.
decided I need to make more money. Like I planned to hope to be married by then and raising kids, and that was not what had happened yet. And I thought I want to be able to provide more for myself, better for myself. So I went and did an immersive web development boot camp, which was
Mhm.
hard and wonderful. And I
So
doubled
what
my
were you
income.
doing? What were you working in before that?
Yeah, I was a regulatory coordinator, which was
Right.
like the go between doctors and drug companies to set up clinical trials.
Yeah.
And
So
the
utterly
story,
different.
oh, totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say that my employment history after college was kind of admin entry level jobs that
Mm.
I was able to like, rise up in the ranks, but I could see clearly that I needed like a career pivot to be able to provide much more comfortably for myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I retooled my career, doubled my income within 18 months, and eventually tripled it. But at the point when I had doubled it, I was still living paycheck to paycheck, embarrassed about my spending. My debt had reached its second highest amount. And that was like a feeling of total hopelessness. Like, okay, this wasn't an income problem, or maybe I'm just terrible with money.
Right.
And what really changed things is looking at everything I spent and accepting all of it. That is something I see very commonly in my coaching practice is people not wanting to accept that they do spend a lot of money on vacations or clothes or things that they label as wants and guilty pleasures. And so when I finally brought everything out into the open, I saw that I could be debt free in 3.5 years, and that felt like so soon, considering that up to that point, I thought it'd be decades, given my history. And for the first time, I saw budgeting as this like friend, not foe.
Yeah.
And and I really felt like I spent more and I enjoyed it more. And somehow I was able to pay way more than I ever had on my debt. And I became debt free in less than 2 years. And it's been the opposite of fad budgeting or fad money management. Like
Mhm.
it just, when I saw what was possible and that budgeting could be this like oasis of control in a
Uh-huh.
busy life,
Yeah.
it really did change everything. And so debt free and haven't looked back.
So when you what got you to sit down? Well, there are two things. There's there's got to be like a thing that got you to do that
Hmm.
finally, whether it's your parents or like somebody who's like, "Girlfriend, you got to get your act together." Like we can see the stress on you.
Hmm.
Like I'm sure your family could see a stress.
No, actually,
No?
no, because
Oh,
what spenders do well, and I know well. So I should also mention I've written the book Dear Fellow Spender, and
yeah.
that's very much how I
I don't
have
have it here
identified
to
and
hold up.
still do. You know,
You have it there?
I as the author, I do, yeah.
Please do.
So here's the let's
There it
see, yeah.
is.
You can see it's got
Well,
tabs of like some of my favorite parts.
well, we will put that obviously on the survival guide
Oh
site,
yeah.
and people can
Yeah,
read
thank you,
parts
Kim.
of it, and yeah, but so
I just bring that up and to answer your first question about like what was the impetus. I
Mhm.
hid all this like stress and shame and embarrassment. I
Yeah.
might share occasionally with my parents, but I wanted to kind of act like I had everything together
Yeah.
because I was in my 30s and I'm an adult and I should. And that is a huge message of my book is like relatability because so many smart, successful, talented women can just kind of keep those feelings inside, feeling like they're the only one
Mhm.
or feeling like they're bad with money. And I am such an example that you're not bad with money. Um, yeah, so I just shared that. And then the thing that caused me to have this introspection and financial transformation was actually a breakup and comparison. So they say
Yeah.
comparison is the thief of joy.
Oh,
In this case, it actually served me really well.
I love that. I forgot about that saying.
It's a good one, huh?
Comparison is the thief of joy. Oh,
Yeah. But in this case, it really did. It was comparing myself to the guy who had just broken up with me. Comparing my life to his life and the options he had with the options I had. And granted, he could have been mired in debt, but I didn't think that was the case. And so I just saw that he, owned a home and could travel all he wanted and buy all the cool things. And my sister asked when I was actually lamenting about this. So I, was sharing it with her that
mhm.
I was discouraged about my debt. She asked, "How long would it take you to get out of debt?" And I had literally never answered that question because I had just assumed the worst case. Like, it feels like it'll be forever, so it must be forever. And so when she asked me that question, I put everything down on paper. I
Yeah.
invited her over to, like, for the first time, I was willing to let somebody look at my numbers,
Wow.
and
That's
it was yeah, yeah. It's sensitive territory. And so letting her
very
look at
sensitive.
numbers and be like, "I think you could actually spend more in this category. Maybe you could cut back here." Like, she was very kind in that
Mhm.
conversation. And yeah, and maybe not everybody would be,
Yeah. Well, that's really
but
cool that she was, because it
uh,
could have backfired.
for sure. For sure. Because the worst thing that a spender who's already ashamed about their spending habits can experience is judgment.
Mhm.
And that's why I resisted telling most everybody about it. And I didn't want to go talk with a financial planner because I knew I was a mess. I knew that they would just say, get out of debt, but how? Or stop spending on everything you enjoy. That didn't seem like a great option either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it really was the willingness to let somebody help me and at least provide a little bit of feedback, a
Yeah.
little bit of sounding board. And that was the night. Literally, it was a night that I saw, okay, I could be debt free in 3.5 years and still enjoy life while I
Yeah.
get there. That really changed everything.
Is that who you are now for people? Like,
Mhm.
in a way, like, bring me your bring me your worst, and I
Yeah.
promise I won't judge you, and we will figure this out?
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like if anybody follows me on Instagram or LinkedIn or reads my book, they know that, like, I have walked this journey myself, so
Yeah.
I cannot judge.
Yeah.
And I find that my role in my relationships with coaching, I'm almost the advocate, the compassionate one, showing them how to show compassion to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, because
Oh,
they come embarrassed about their spending habits
yeah.
or wanting to minimize it. And
Mhm.
I could very, like, gently be like, what about clothes? How often do you like to shop? How much do you spend on clothes? And they came into that call wanting to pretend like they don't buy clothes.
Right.
But
You're
that
like,
doesn't serve yeah, it doesn't serve them at all. And
you're like, "But it's
my
right here. I see what you spend on clothes. It's not a secret.
yeah.
It's
Well,
right on your
actually,
credit report."
yeah. No, I let clients really drive kind of level of comfort, and so some right out of the gate are just like, here's everything. And they'll kind of share all their dirty money laundry with me right out of the gate. But
Mhm.
for some, it takes a little bit of time to feel comfortable and to know that I won't judge and that I won't tell them, you've got to stop spending like that. I never will say that ever. Because for one, it wouldn't work. And for two, it's not my money. And how can I tell them what should be important to them with their money? So
It sounds a lot like, dealing with an addict. in a
Mm,
way, where you can have someone go to meetings as much as you
mhm,
want, but until that person is really ready to take control of their issues, their
mhm.
addiction, um, it's never going to work. Like you can lock them in in a closet for
Yeah.
3 months and hope for the best, and it's still
Ah,
not going to work. But
yeah.
because the language is so similar, the shame
Mhm,
and the
mhm,
hiding, and um, it is it is interesting, that the similarity between the two.
mhm,
I never really thought about that, because but it is anything that causes shame creates secrecy.
mhm,
And so what
mhm.
you're trying to say is, look, it doesn't have to be bare bones. Like, I'm going to punish you, and I'm going to, like,
Yeah.
make you feel horrible. But in the meantime, we'll get you out of debt. And then, we'll give you some tools.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday you'll get your act back together. You're kind of more like, okay, let's simmer down.
Yeah.
But this may take 5 years. I think that's the other point. This ain't going to happen overnight. Like, you had booked 3 years possibly, but
Mhm,
basically you're saying, like, it didn't take that long. And I think with consistent checking in,
mhm.
this person may find, are they working with, like, a budget, like, on their computer, like, where
Yes.
everything? Yeah.
Yeah. And I just, I mean, it is so similar to addictions. And like you said, anything that causes shame also leads to secrecy and pain.
Yeah.
And, even if it took me 3.5 years to get out of debt, and, I'm thinking of one client who, I his was less than a year for tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh.
Like, so while there's no, like, switch that just, like, makes them debt free overnight,
Mhm.
um, what I know happened for me, and I've seen it happen for clients, what can happen overnight is the shame balloon pops. As soon as you see what's possible when you get on purpose,
Yeah.
and you
On
see it
purpose.
as, yeah, and when you see that, like, you don't have to give up everything that makes your life interesting and
Hmm.
enjoyable, um, it really, the shame goes away, and it's replaced by, like, this overwhelming sense of purpose and self-confidence, like, "Oh, I can do this thing." And
And
that is
control.
absolutely, and in a world that's, like, busy and full and there's so much out of our control, it's
Hmm.
such a gift to give yourself something you can control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's
mhm,
um so here's what I think, since this is about to end.
mhm,
We can start a new one, and in the next episode I want to talk
mhm,
to Emily about, she has a whole process of dealing with young adults and financial responsibility and taking it on for themselves, which I think with my group is a really interesting topic, and a very difficult topic, because our lives are so busy. um,
mhm.
I just think that would be a great thing to talk about. But I don't know if, do you feel like we fully covered what you did?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so, and some of it'll kind of intertwine in the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
part of our
Well,
conversation.
I think that would
Yeah.
be great. We'll restart,
Okay.
as we've done with so many people we interview with, and we'll come back to the round two: young adults and financial responsibility, teaching parents how to manage their kids' future financial wellness. Yeah.
Cool. Can't wait.